for someone to pay another $7,000-$8,000 for a card, to just look at a card stock and say, wow, it's got a gritty surface. Nothing else about it. There's nothing else outstanding about it. Well, the name might be a little lowered. I mean, how is that different from a thin and thick Pokemon stamp, first edition base set? And I keep going back to this comparison because, let's be honest, it's true. Okay? PSA is never going to tribute wavy, glossy print. Because what about that other third print? You talk about first, second, wavy, glossy. What about the print that, oh, I'm looking at it. Is it glossy? Is it wavy? What about that print? That probably is even rarer than the glossy and wavy print combined. But nobody talks about that print where you look at it and it's, well, it's half wavy, half glossy. What are we doing here?
In a world full of Yu-Gi-Oh cards, grading, selling, buying, one card game remains supreme. One man has the insights you need to know. Watch and subscribe now. YugiohTube.
Oh, I can't wait to see the comments and reactions to this video. A lot of thumbs down I could foresee in the future. A lot of comments saying, Tim, you are crazy. YugiohTube, what are you talking about? Do you understand how rare this card is? How dare you? I thought this channel was about rarity and vintage cards and values and investments and buys and sells and collectible aspects and things you could really only get that are rare and unique. How could you say this about the most iconic card in the game? Specifically, the Blue Eyes White Dragon. Specifically, the LOB First Edition variety. Specifically, even more targeted, the WAVY variety. Well, obviously, if you looked at the title of this video, you are going to see my thoughts on that. I really, truly believe that this card has been inflated to oblivion. This card has been, quote-unquote, hyped up. I hate to say the word, but let's be honest. When people are paying 50 to 60% premiums on a simple card stock, I find it absolutely insane. Especially the fact that this likely didn't even come first. The whole glorious aspect of a wavy print meant, well, yeah, it's aesthetically cooler and more pleasing and it's got that vintage feel, but we all knew in the back of our minds, this is going back to 2012, 13, 14, that wavy came first. And no, we've concluded here that there's a very good possibility that wavy actually came at the very least at the same time as glossy, if not after glossy. So yes, it's a variety of print, right? And the only difference now between a wavy and glossy print is, well, I guess the supply is shorter. That's true, right? There's, what, only 2010s of the wavy variety and about 80% of it is glossy variety. But for someone to pay another $7,000-$8,000 for a card, to just look at a card stock and say, wow, it's got a gritty surface. Nothing else about it. There's nothing else outstanding about it. Well, the name might be a little lowered. I mean, how is that different from a thin and thick Pokemon stamp, first edition base set? And I keep going back to this comparison because, let's be honest, it's true. Okay? PSA is never going to tribute wavy, glossy print. Because what about that other third print? You talk about first, second, wavy, glossy. What about the print that, oh, I'm looking at it. Is it glossy? Is it wavy? What about that print? That probably is even rarer than the glossy and wavy print combined. But nobody talks about that print where you look at it and it's, well, it's half wavy, half glossy. What are we doing here? What have we implemented this idea into people's minds that, well, because wavy is only 20% of a population, or wavy is this much rarer than glossy, that it should be worth 60% higher than that of glossy and demand a $7,000 premium? You know, it's almost like Gary V pumping up sports cards and saying, well, this card's undervalued and he's got 1 million followers. And what happens? People buy it out. And what happens? All of his assets just balloon. For those who don't know Gary Vee, an entrepreneur, millionaire, $100 million plus. And he's getting into investing sports cards. And he says, well, I think this Ronald Acuna card is going to go up. I think Shaquille O'Neal is an undervalued card. And he tweets it, and what happens? The card goes from $40 to $200 overnight, and that's its new selling price. He speaks to a bunch of sheep that just believes what he says, and it helps inflate his own asset pool. So he's going to go and have his own best interests here and say something about a card, and it just boosts his own asset value. And this is coming from someone, I have plenty of wavy and glossy. Okay, I have wavy, glossy, hollows, PSA 10 first eds. I have wavy and glossy box of Blue Eyes White Dragon. I don't think the wavy box should be worth any more than the glossy box. I don't think that should be the case at all. Now, you might say, well, why don't you sell it at the same price, Tim? Why don't you sell wavy stuff at the same price as glossy? I mean, look, if people are willing to pay, do you blame me for selling? Do I believe it's worth that price? Absolutely not. But if someone says, here's 50, 60 more percent, of course I'm going to sell at a 50% increase. Who wouldn't? Who wouldn't? But the fact that so many people think that, well, this wavy Blue Eyes is so much rarer and worth $7,000 more than that of a glossy version. Are you kidding me? So again, now what about this third print? What about this mixture between wavy and glossy that we can't even tell? Where does that stand on the pedestal? Is that worth $30K? Because that's what I think we're getting towards. We're getting towards a point where, first of all, it'll never be attributed by PSA. You'll never see glossy, wavy print. And even if it is, what's the big deal? First edition thin and thick stamp in Pokemon, that was the big rage for a good year. Okay? And what happened to that? You still see titles that say Charizard, first edition, thick stamp. Charizard, first edition, thin stamp. There's hardly a premium anymore. The premium is gone. It's out the window. So just because people have this idea, well, you know, it is harder to get the wavy variety. Yeah, of course, it might be harder to get a thick stamp than a thin stamp. But as we see, the market corrected and that thinning has happened. That towards the median has happened. The thinning. There's no longer this massive gap anymore between the two. And again, this video is going to set a lot of people off, especially the people that have the card. But let's be honest, if I had a wavy Blue Eyes 10 right now and someone was saying, I'll give you a 60% increase, I'll give you $20,000 for it, it's sold. There's no question. I don't care at that point that it's the iconic monster of the game. When someone's offering you $7,000 more for the same card in a different card stock, that I don't believe in at all one bit, then of course I'm going to sell it. And I feel like the people holding this card, of course, they're hoping that by holding this card and by hoping the 20% of other people do, it's just going to raise the prices for the people that desperately want it. But here's the problem. The problem is the people that desperately want this card, this wavy variety, because they are contributing to these high increase in price hikes. If these people were like, well, it's really not that big of a difference. It won't be attributed. It's a thick and thin stamp. It's kind of a gimmick. If they had that mentality, well, guess what will happen to wavy Blue Eyes? You won't see that 50% premium anymore. You won't see $20,000 compared to a $13,000 glossy version. If people's mentality had changed, or if it does change, the wavy Blue Eyes, the gap between the two is going to absolutely crash and thin. And that's up to people to decide. It's up to people to think. I can't change a group mentality. That mentality's made. The market has spoken. I'm just here as a third-party observer watching this go on. And I'm stunned. The fact that, well, someone is going to pay $7,000 more for a gritty card stock compared to a glossy card stock, in which very likely didn't even come first, because that was the whole advantage. Everyone said, well, wavy came first. Well, we found out it very likely didn't. We found out glossy very likely did. So that was the main differentiator between the two. Okay? And even me, back then, When I looked at WAVY and we all assumed that it came first, I could see why the premium was put. Okay? Now I don't. Once we concluded here the great possibility that WAVY did not indeed come first, I lost all interest in the card. I said, so prices remain the same. It didn't come first, and it's a different card stock. So I'm going to go and pay $7,000 more, $20,000 for a WAVY Blue Eyes, and $13,000 for a glossy. Instead, when I can get a glossy for $13,000, a DDS for $3,000, and an SDK for $3,000, and there's the $20,000. Why would I not do that instead? Why would I not buy a glossy Blue Eyes for $13,000 and buy a prize card? And there's the $20K. Have the $7K left over, put it into a crush card or something. There's your $20K. Instead, people are blowing $20,000 on a WAVY Blue Eyes White Dragon for just a card stock. Again, if there was something differentiating that said, okay, well, the text box has a different word in it that the glossy doesn't. Oh, that's different. The font was different. That's different. Think about what we're spending our money on. I mean, look, if you have the money, go for it. If you really want it, if you want every variation of Blue Eyes, go for it. But then you're going to have to get that third print. That's a mixture in between the two. So good luck with that. Mind is blown. Until next time, what do you think? Comment below, like, subscribe. Obviously, I'm expecting an influx of comments and always some good stuff. But this is what this channel is about. It's about discussing the good and the bad things. You know, it's about discussing going against the grain, what people think, and why I disagree on certain aspects. Because if everyone agreed on everything, this would be boring. This isn't fun. And let's be honest, people have different opinions. And I'd love to hear what you guys say. Sure, it's a shorter print run. 20%, 80%. 20% is glossy. But again, what's the print run of something that is in between? What's the print run of thick and thin stamp? Did it really matter in the end? Until next time, Yu-Gi-Oh! 2, signing out.